She chose him. And in the specific gut punch moment when that reality landed, when the choice became undeniable and the hope you had been quietly maintaining finally had nowhere left to live, something happened that nobody prepares you for. Not just the pain of losing, the specific clarifying pain of a decision point. A fork in the road that looked like devastation, but was actually underneath the grief and the disorientation and the specific ache of being passed over. An invitation, the most important invitation your life had ever extended. The invitation to finally, fully, completely choose yourself. Like and subscribe to Stoic Blessing. We show up every week for the man doing the hard work. Let's get into it. The first thing to understand is what her choice actually revealed. Not about your worth, not about your adequacy, not about whether what you brought was enough, but about the specific, honest, practically important reality of the dynamic that preceded it. Her choosing him was not an objective evaluation conducted by an impartial judge with access to complete information. It was a decision made by a specific person in a specific moment of her life, filtered through her specific psychology, her specific needs at that particular chapter of her development, and the specific information available to her, which included the full, complex, genuinely known reality of you, and the early-stage novelty-amplified projection of someone new. That decision was not a verdict. It was a moment, and moments, however painful, are not permanent assessments of permanent truths. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the discipline of seeing situations as they actually are, rather than as the story Pain constructs around them. The story Pain tells is she compared you fully and accurately and concluded you were less. The actual reality is she made a choice under conditions that were never comparison. The comparison was never fair. It was never between two, capable of producing an objective comparison. The comparison was never fair. It was never between two equally known, equally real people. It was between the reality of you and the projection of him. And projections always win in the short term. Reality always wins in the long term. Her choice was a moment, not the final word. Comment below. Her choice, not my verdict. If you finally separated what her decision says about her from what you know about yourself, here is the specific thing that happened the moment you chose yourself. And naming it precisely matters because it is almost never what most people expected to feel like from the outside. Choosing yourself did not feel like triumph. It did not feel like the inspiring, forwarding, visibly transforming experience that the external narrative suggests it should. It felt initially like loss, like grief, like the specific, quiet, honest weight of finally accepting that the connection was not of the genuine choosing, however, going to be what you had been hoping it would be. And underneath the loss, present from the very first moment of the genuine choosing, however quietly, was something else. Something that has no clean, single name, a specific, strange, almost uncomfortable sense of return, of coming back to something that had been waiting. The ground of your own life, your own values, your own daily becoming, patiently available the entire time you were organized around someone else's choosing of you. Epictetus taught that the man who has placed his sense of himself in the territory of things outside his control, in the choices of other people, in the ongoing assessment of his worth by those who may or may not be equipped to make it accurately, is a man who is perpetually at the mercy of what he cannot govern. And the man who returns that sense of himself to the only territory where it was ever genuinely safe, to his own character, his own daily choices, and choosing yourself, his own growing relationship with the man he has decided to become, is a man who has done something that no one else's choice can undo. He has chosen himself. And choosing yourself once genuinely done is one of the most durable decisions available in a human life. Comment below, I chose myself. if the decision to finally invest in your own life was the one that actually changed everything. Now, the Stoic demand, the central one that this entire video is built around, and the one that most directly determines whether choosing yourself produces genuine transformation or simply a temporary repositioning that collapses the moment the external circumstances change. Choosing yourself cannot be organized around her eventual recognition of what the choice produced. It cannot be pointed toward the moment when she sees the version of you that choosing yourself built and understands through that encounter the cost of her decision. Choice so painful in the first place. First, because choosing yourself organized around her recognition is not genuinely choosing yourself. It is the most sophisticated version of the same other-directedness that made her choice so painful in the first place. You are still fundamentally organized around her, still making her the primary audience for the choices you are calling your own. The genuine choosing of yourself is organized around a completely different question. Marcus Aurelius asked himself one question every single day of his adult life in the private journals that were never meant for any audience but himself. Did I act today in accordance with the man I have decided to be? Not did she notice, nor did the choice produce the recognition I was hoping for. Did I act from my values? That question directed entirely inward, answered honestly, requiring no external confirmation to remain meaningful, is the measure. The man who chooses himself from that for me, if the choosing stopped being. Measure does not need her to encounter the result in order to feel that the choosing was worth doing. It is already worth doing because it is producing the only result that is genuinely permanently his. Comment below. I build for me if the choosing stopped being about her recognition the moment it became genuinely yours. Let's talk about what choosing yourself actually looks like in the specific daily unglamorous reality of the period following her choice, because the aspirational version of choosing yourself that most content describes bears almost no resemblance to what genuinely choosing yourself actually feels like from the inside. It does not feel like triumph. Most days it feels like the specific, quiet, difficult practice of showing up for your own life, when showing up feels harder than the available alternatives. The morning workout done when grief was louder than motivation. The work invested in when the temptation is not determined by its peak. To analyze her choice one more time was stronger than the desire to build something within the day. The honest self-examination conducted in the evening when comfortable self-exoneration would have been so much easier. Seneca wrote that the quality of a life is not determined by its peak moments, but by the texture of its ordinary ones, by the specific daily, individually unremarkable choices that collectively constitute the character and direction of a man's existence. The genuine choosing of yourself is in that texture. Not in the dramatic decision to be better, not in the specific visible transformation that announces the choice to anyone who might be watching. In the ordinary, daily compounding reality of a man who shows up for his own becoming consistently, honestly, in the full awareness that the showing up is building something. Even on the days when the something is not yet visible, that consistency, quiet, unglamorous, be described precisely because entirely yours is what choosing yourself actually is. Comment below. Ordinary days, real choice. If the transformation happened in the daily work, not in a single moment of decision, here is what the choosing of yourself is actually building. And this deserves to be described precisely because it is almost never what people imagine when they first make the decision. It is not building a more impressive version of you that she will be unable to resist when she eventually encounters it. It is not building a better body or a more successful career or a more curated life as evidence that her choice was wrong. Those things may come as natural consequences. They are not the substance of what is being built. What is being built is your relationship with yourself. The specific daily honestly accumulated relationship between you and the accurate tested, lived into knowledge of your own worth, your own capacity, your own inviolable sanctuary of your own mind, and character under genuine pressure. That relationship built not through affirmations, but through the specific daily costly practice of keeping promises to yourself, when keeping them is hard, is the most valuable thing the period following her choice can produce. Marcus Aurelius called this the inner citadel, the inviolable sanctuary of your own mind and your own judgment that no external force can enter without your permission. He built it daily, not in comfortable circumstances, but in demanding ones. Every difficult morning where he chose his values over his comfort. Every interaction where he responded from his character instead of his emotion. Every moment of pressure where he held his own ground. All of it was the specific brick-by-brick construction of the inner architecture that made him, in the truest sense, genuinely free. The choosing of yourself in the period following her choice is the same construction. Not the building of because this is the most avoided, impressive external result, the building of the inner citadel. And the inner citadel once built cannot be taken, not by her return, not by her continued absence, not by anything. Comment below. Building the citadel if the real choice was always the inner work, not the visible transformation. Let's talk about what the honest accounting of the situation reveals, because this is the most avoided part of the entire process, and the most important part for ensuring the choosing of yourself produces genuine change rather than simply genuine pain. Her choice revealed something. Not just about her and her psychology, about the dynamic, about what you were contributing to it, about the specific ways in which the version of yourself you were bringing to the connection had perhaps been organized around her ongoing assessment of you in ways that were gradually, almost imperceptibly, reducing you. The honest examination of that contribution, not to assign blame. Where were you tolerating? Not to construct the comfortable narrative in which all the growth is happening because of her failure, is the specific, practically transformative accounting that genuine self-choosing requires. Seneca wrote that the experience that teaches you nothing about yourself was not genuinely engaged with. What did your response to the dynamic reveal about you? Where were you giving in ways that were not being met? Where were you tolerating what you should have named? Where were you organizing yourself around her assessment of you in ways that were costing you the specific, authentic, fully inhabited version of yourself that is the only version worth bringing to any connection? These questions, answered honestly and used honestly, are the specific, irreplaceable content of the genuine choosing of yourself. Not the new gym routine, the honest understanding of your own patterns carried forward into every subsequent connection that makes the next one genuinely different rather than simply newer. Comment below. I looked honestly if examining your own part without flinching was where the real choosing actually began. Here is what the man who has genuinely chosen himself carries into his next connection, because this is the specific forward-looking consequence of the choosing, and it deserves to be described with precision rather than left as an aspirational abstraction. He carries the specific embodied daily verified knowledge of his own worth, not as an affirmation he tells himself, but as a truth he has lived into through the specific and demanding experience of being passed over and choosing in the period that followed to build rather than to collapse. He carries the honest accounting of his own contribution to the previous dynamic. The specific, practically useful knowledge of what he was bringing that was genuinely good and what he was not bringing that the connection needed. He honest work of choosing himself through that test carries something into carries the more discerning standard for where his investment goes. The specific values-based clarity about what genuine reciprocity looks like and what he will and will not accept in place of it. Epictetus taught that the man who has been genuinely tested, who has faced the specific targeted difficulty of having his worth questioned by someone whose assessment mattered to him, and who has done the genuine, daily, honest work of choosing himself through that test, carries something into every subsequent connection that the untested man does not yet have. The specific bone-deep, unassailable knowledge of what he is made of, not claimed in comfort, proven in difficulty. And that knowledge present in how he carries himself in the specific quality of his presence that cannot be manufactured through any external improvement program is felt immediately by every person he encounters, including her. And when she encounters it, the specific, unmistakable moment deserves to be handled with the quality of a man who chose himself and built something real from that choosing. She encounters something she did not expect to find. Comment below. Tested and built. If the choosing tried to break you and instead gave you exactly what you needed to become more, let's address what to do if she comes back. Because her choice, when it is followed by the specific quality of a man who genuinely chose himself in response, frequently produces exactly that. And this moment deserves to be handled with the full clarity of everything the choosing produced, rather than with the reactive relief that the choosing was built to move beyond. The man who genuinely chose himself does not respond to her return the way the man who was waiting responds. He does not feel the specific rush of vindication that immediately restores the previous dynamic, as though the choice and the choosing of himself had never happened. He used the period of her choosing him to examine her own patterns, and is warmly, honestly from the grounded place, and he brings the specific clarity of a man who has used the period of her absence to become genuinely more himself. The question he brings, not defensively, not with the desire to punish, but with the honest clarity of a man who respects himself and the situation equally, is whether what is being offered reflects genuine growth on her side as well as his. Not just warmth, not just the recognition of what was lost, the specific observable behavioral evidence of someone who has used the period of her choosing him to examine her own patterns and is genuinely willing to show up differently. The choosing of himself was not done to prepare for her return, but if it produces a man who is more specifically and honestly himself, and if what she is bringing reflects genuine willingness to meet that man at the level of his actual worth, that is worth exploring with full openness. If it does not, the choosing daily imperfect genuinely continues in the direction it was always heading toward the life that deserves the man it is producing. Comment below real growth or keep building if you've decided that coming back only matters if something has genuinely changed. The final thing, she chose him over you. And that choice, as painful as it was, as specifically targeted as it felt, as genuinely costly as it proved to be in the specific ways that being passed over always costs, produced something she did not calculate for when she made it. Not your collapse, your choosing of yourself. The specific daily imperfect, genuinely demanding practice of a man who took the most personally targeted form of being found wanting, and chose in the period that followed to invest in the only thing that was always within his control to build himself, his character, his daily relationship with the man he had decided to become. That man built in the ordinary days, entirely yours, turned out to be the verified through the honest examination of his own contribution, strengthened through the specific and irreplaceable experience of choosing himself. When choosing himself was the harder option, is not the man the comparison was made about. He is genuinely more, not more impressive in the visible dimensions, more real, more honest, more specifically himself, more grounded in the specific daily verified unassailable knowledge of his own worth that can only be produced through exactly this kind of test. She chose him over you, and you finally chose yourself. And the choosing of yourself, quiet, daily, unglamorous, entirely yours, turned out to be the most important choice available in this entire situation. Not hers, yours. Like and subscribe to Stoic Blessing. Stay grounded, stay whole, stay unbreakable.